is the way. This is the way.
Here we are.
Well, good morning, Matt. You know what? I think it's time to take in the sheets.
Chicken butt.
What do you say?
Yeah.
Chicken butt.
Yeah.
That too.
Yes, it is time to take in the sheets, brother. We've got a monster of a film to review today. Literally, figuratively, metaphorically, just about every way you could describe it. Monster of a film with Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. I am so happy to be doing this today.
Before we get into it, if you're a fan of our videos, please like our content and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out and gives us the opportunity to create more content for you. Woo! So welcome everybody to Fatherly Phantom. Yes, as Matt told us here, we are getting to review the one and only Christopher Nolan's directorial debut on Universal Studios. First one, Oppenheimer.
Yes, switching it up.
Switching it up because he hates digital downloads and whatnot.
Yeah.
So.
You know, I watched both Batman Begins and The Dark Knight with my kids for the first time yesterday, and I kind of missed, you know, with his introduction to both of those films, the ripple that goes across the Warner Brothers logo and that Batman flapping noise that Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard came up with. Yeah. It hits hard right from the beginning, but I understand where Nolan's coming from when he switched it up, going with Universal for Oppenheimer.
Right. Yeah. So let's get into it. So, guys, we didn't have an at the theater reaction for this one because it came out quite a while ago, right? So we're gonna have a small, little, teeny tiny, little bitty, little boy. And it's not gonna be the big boy; it'll be a little boy.
Not the fat man. That's coming up.
Not the fat man. Little boy. Review of this movie where we'll give you a thumbs up, double thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs to the side, let you know whether or not you want to watch this film. So let's just go into our spoiler-free review here, Fatherly Fam.
Yes.
So, Matt, if you have not watched this film for the first time and you wanted to see if somebody wanted to watch it or suggest to anybody if they should watch this or not, what would you say?
Well, so interestingly enough, you and I did a little bit of an experiment with watching this film for the first time, and I tried to put myself in that mindset last summer of what did I think of the movie straight out of the theater, you know, because that's basically the same merit that we have weighed all of these films that we've watched for the Oscars so far. There's been a first-time viewing for each one of them up until Oppenheimer here. So I tried to think, okay, being fair, what did I think of it then? And at that time, I was worried. I got out of the theater. It was quiet all around, packed theater. I went to the big show on the Alamo Drafthouse, their biggest screen down here in Denver, and every single seat was filled. Very quiet. You know, you could have heard a mouse crawl across the floor as everyone was leaving the theater. It was like, oh no, did it not hit the way that I think Christopher Nolan intended, because nobody read the book that it was based on, American Prometheus, right? You and I read the book ahead of time, so we had a little bit of background knowledge, and I was really worried about that. I thought, I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of this movie compared to some of Christopher Nolan's others, compared to some other movies that I'd seen throughout 2023. So at that point, I would have probably given it, I'm going to call it a B plus, an 8 out of 10. Thumbs still up, but just one. And I got to say, whenever I reviewed the film for the second time this last week, totally different experience, but we can get into that. What about you, Chris?
I think you're right. And that's the beauty of Christopher Nolan. I think that he has been working up his way in his filmography to this point, to this story, and he's wanted to do this for a while, and we'll get into more of that later. But coming out of the theater, and I think that somber, quiet atmosphere with the full crowd that you had, that's what was intended. You were supposed to let this sink in. This is a let this sink in kind of, you are not supposed to feel good kind of after this movie and what Oppenheimer went through and just the thought of what happens in the movie. and the ramifications of what they did. And
Right.
there's a lot more to that after I've done a little bit of research here too. But yeah, initially, it was a lot. Even reading American Prometheus myself as well, like we both read it, I thought it was a lot at first, but watching it the second time, you catch all those little things. And yeah, for the first showing, I'd probably give it a thumbs up. Definitely something you should definitely watch.
Yeah.
And
No question
if
about it. A good movie.
yeah, and if we are going to judge it a second time now, seeing it again after some time, I'm that only improves for me. So I'm a double thumbs up now. I'm two thumbs up. Let's
Where's
get
the
some of
fireworks?
where the heck
Where's
are
the
those
bomb?
fireworks?
Oh, wait, we got a bubble. We
But I
got a
think that
Willem
this
Dafoe
movie-
gaseous bubble with a thumbs up next to
Yeah.
you.
If you don't know what that's about, go see our last review on Poor Things. But I do think that this is a movie that everybody could enjoy, that you're going to get something out of. Maybe not your kids. I wouldn't take your kids to see it. They're going to get lost very, very easily in this. Maybe later on, if you have older kids, sure. Yeah, why not? But for
And it's a
the
3-hour long
average-
movie. Going to be hard to sit through for kids.
True,
for sure.
It is. Oh yeah, attention span's not there. But for the average moviegoer, this is an experience, and one of the best experiences I think we've had in a long time in film. And it's something that needs to be sunk in. I wish I could have seen this in IMAX. I know that it's a very personal story, but just seeing the beautiful film, just the cinematography in this is just amazing. I got to give a shout out to the cinematographer too a little bit later on. But man, it's beautiful from beginning to end. It's just beautifully done. The score is brilliant. The script is amazing, written by Christopher Nolan too, which is amazing. And I can't praise this film enough. You got to see it. If you don't know a lot about history or Oppenheimer, I think that you'll get the gist watching the movie. You don't need to read American Prometheus to get what's going on. I think that they do a wonderful job at kind of summing it up and actually staying pretty accurate to what actually happened. There's a few things that they tweaked, but they did a great job at presenting all this stuff in a very palatable story that's at the center of it is a first-hand perspective of Oppenheimer, which is beautifully done. So
Which
everybody go see it.
As a way to continue the experiment, my wife had not seen it last summer. She had not read the book American Prometheus, and so when we sat down last week to watch it, she was coming into it with basically a casual interest, in history and some knowledge of a few of the players in the Manhattan Project and all that kind of stuff. So nowhere near the level of knowledge of the detail of all the little side characters and all of the people involved. She didn't know about any of that stuff, but the film landed very well for her. She really liked it. And I think that if she was here, would have given it at least one, if not both, thumbs up. So I thought that was very, very cool to kind of get her view on things going in completely cold. And I honestly felt after hearing her opinion and after realizing how much my opinion changed on a second viewing, I think that I wish I had done the opposite, that I'd read the book after to fill in some of the details. Because I think what happened was on the first viewing, because I had read the book, the editing style and even though it's 3 hours, the quick pace of the movie, I'm sitting there in my brain going, oh yeah, that's that guy. Oh, that's when that happened. Oh, that's when that happened. And it's just too much. And so instead of trying to process everything and compare it to the book as I'm seeing it, I wish that I had saw it first and then, for the parts of me that would have been inquisitive afterwards, I wonder a little bit more detail about Edward Teller or about the H-bomb program, all that, then go to the book and have all that
fill in all those gaps. Yeah. And I find that that's more of the way that I want to do it with movies anyways that are adapted from books. Because I'm always at least a little disappointed when I read a book and then I watch the movie. I'm like, they left this out, they left that out. But I mean, this movie's 3 hours long. I mean, how much more are we expecting them to cram into the motion picture? So I think that, yeah, it is best if you are interested in reading the book to watch the movie first and then go back and read the book, because it really does give it some context too. And then you get those
Right.
all those extra little pieces in there about the story. And I gotta say, Matt, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but the book is very dry. You know, it's a lot of information.
So a
You know,
lot
it's
of,
not.
it reads like a textbook on Oppenheimer's
Yes,
life, as well as the
for sure.
people involved in the Manhattan Project. So
Exactly. They did a lot of research, and all hats off to the writers and everything. They did a
yeah.
great job with the book. But yeah, it is a bit of a dry read too. But if you are interested in history and everything, and you enjoyed Oppenheimer, you will get something out of the book as well. So I do recommend reading American Prometheus. What do you think, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved the book. And yeah, it does read a little blunt, a little dry sometimes, but I
Yeah,
think that they did what they could with it. There's just a vast amount of information. Okay, it's really
so much.
surprising how much
Yeah.
information it is. You know, I look at the comparison with those people's lives compared to modern day, and
Hmm.
holy crap, those people just journaled the heck out of their lives. Like, I can't believe some of the stuff that they wrote down. Like, who in their
Hmm.
right mind would write down this stuff in private, these private thoughts, these occurrences, these liaisons that he would have with other women? Are like, why is he writing any of this down in his journals? Why is she writing this down? But you look at Facebook, you look at social media now, and we're
Wasn't
plastering
as
up the
connected.
same amount of
Yeah.
stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really what it comes down to, is that just as human beings, we have a need to catalog and document things, and
Hmm.
that was their version of Facebook back then: letters to each other, private journals, and unfortunately, with the circumstances surrounding the government's involvement in all of this, a lot of surveillance tape.
Hmm.
So a lot of that stuff was, private meetings and everything recorded by the FBI at the time. And all of that is put into the book as well, as a way of
Yeah.
kind of, the journal entries can be subjective, but those recordings, there's not really much you can do to say other than that's what was really said at the time. So,
Right. Right.
yeah, so if you're interested in that level of detail, the book is highly recommended.
Yep. And so I said it myself. I give it 2 thumbs up. What do you give it now, Matt, after watching it the second time?
Definitely 2 thumbs up. I found a way to piece it out and watch it for a third time last week as well,
Woo!
because I was so excited with my
Yeah.
change of opinion the second time around.
Right.
So,
And this is a film I'm probably going to watch again, So,
and
and
again,
again,
yeah,
and again, and again.
yeah.
We'll get into it, but why don't we go over and slip on in to the spoiler
Let's
filled
get the
section.
spoilers out there.
Let's get it out there. So, get ready, guys. Here we go.
This is a national emergency.
Detonator charged.
We're in a race against the Nazis, and I know what it means. If the Nazis have a bomb.
Let's go recruit some scientists.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Damn.
Awesome.
Even the trailer is just
Yeah.
so
And the movie feels
good.
like that. I think the
does,
marketing
it does.
team did a great job of reflecting the actual look and feel of the movie, which doesn't always happen.
They
So,
did. And so, as always, well, not as always, but we're bringing it back. We're looking at the old Rotten Tomatoes scores once again. So, without further ado, let's look at the Rotten Tomatoes
See what
score
they
before we
say.
get in there. What do they say? What do we got here? We got a 93% on
Yep.
on the tomato meter and a 91% for the average audience score. So,
a little bit of a rarity for
Yeah.
audiences and critics to agree like that.
I know. And that's usually a good sign. Like, that means that
Yeah.
this is top quality thing. So it's a 8.6 out of 10 for our critics, and 4.5 out of 5 for the average rating. 10,000 plus on
Yeah.
there for that one.
I,
So
I would
there
say
you
that
go.
when you see audiences agree with the critics like that on Rotten Tomato, you can
Hmm.
almost guarantee that above all, the film that you're going to watch is entertaining. It might not be fun, or it might not
Yeah.
be, as dramatic or whatever as you might think, but at the very least, it'll be super entertaining, which this movie
Hmm.
is. And
Absolutely.
I think it's got a lot going for it. So
It does. It
the
does
um,
indeed.
the Academy thought so as well, because, as you know, my friend, they nominated this thing for 13, count 'em, 13
13.
Academy Awards this year. And I think it's
Yeah.
got a pretty good chance at a lot of them. So, without further ado, what do you think we just get right into them?
We are, yeah. So we're gonna do this a little different than our last reviews that we had for the Academy Award run Oscar Odyssey Film Flight, a fancy fatherly fandom fun times Mojo
Yeah.
Dojo reviews, and all that in a
Yeah.
bag of chips. That's for all you old folks out there. Yeah, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of break down some of the categories, right, for all
Hmm.
13 nominations of this film. Which,
Yeah.
my God, there's a lot. What should we start with? Should we
Well,
just
I
name
mean,
them all first and then start with one of them?
well, let's go one by one,
Yeah.
and I'd like to stop or to start at the bottom of the list. And this is not a list that designates a measure of importance. It's just
Mm-hmm.
how they list out the Academy Awards, and you'll see once the actual ceremony occurs. This is generally how they announce them too. So
Yeah.
we could have talked about this film for longer than the actual movie, I'm sure, because of all the stuff that we enjoyed in there, all the stuff that we researched about this. But in order to keep it succinct for y'all, we're going to go with what the Academy thought, and then give sort of our impressions, our predictions, and yeah, lead up from the first being makeup and hairstyling to the last one being the best picture, which is what we're judging all of these films that we watch on. So, makeup and hairstyling. What did you think, Chris?
Well, I think that it was really well done. I think that they
Yeah,
aged up Cillian Murphy pretty well in this. Like,
yeah.
I think that he played a good part in, showing the younger showing the younger Oppenheimer versus the older Oppenheimer. I think that they did a great
Hmm.
job in making him look like Oppenheimer, which you can see up here. So yeah, hats off to the makeup and wardrobe for the
Or on,
authenticity.
if you, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
if you're looking at that
yeah.
picture there.
Woo.
um, yeah, the authenticity is on full display in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think makeup and hairstyling did a wonderful job of, you can really see the movie bounces around. We'll get into editing in a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's not a linear chronology that you're seeing. So makeup and
No.
hairstyling is crucial to kind of know where you're at in the
Place
story.
you in that time frame.
Exactly. And so you can
Hmm.
clearly see Killian age, you can see Emily Blunt age.
Right.
I think from my perspective, there were a couple of times where I was confused. Josh Hartnett, his character, I think he played, forgive me if I'm wrong, Edward Lawrence, is it? Or Ernest? Ernest Lawrence, Dr. Ernest Lawrence, an experimentalist that worked with Oppenheimer out at Berkeley. There are a
Hmm.
couple of times where I'm like, oh, well,
Yeah.
his
Ernest
character,
Lawrence.
he comes in as a witness in the Security Council meeting,
Hmm.
and he looks just the same, but everybody else that's there has got the receding hairlines, and I was like, oh, so I don't know if that was just a goof or something. Later on, when they're presenting the Nobel Prize to Killian, he's sort of gotten the age makeup done. But there was a couple times, a couple other characters. Jack Quaid was another one that I was like, oh, I'm not sure what age he is in this one or what particular time. So I
Hmm.
don't think it was always there, but by and large, the main characters that were in front of the camera the most, I think they did a tremendous job, especially since you're filming the detail of these makeup effects and prosthetics with an IMAX freaking camera.
Yeah.
So the
I
level of
know.
detail is immense. You know that it's going to be blown up on the biggest screens in the country. So, it made me think of, I don't know if you thought of this, Chris, but whenever we've seen Doc Brown age in Back to the Future, especially Back to the Future 2, it's a little joke
Yeah.
where he
Yep.
peels off, he says he got a change of
Yep.
blood and all this stuff,
Mhm.
and he peels off his makeup. And they really just did that in the film to make it to where Christopher Lloyd didn't constantly have to wear old guy makeup.
Yeah.
But I was hoping that the old person makeup in this movie would not emulate the effects of that type of thing, which you can see on full display in many modern movies. The wrinkles
Right.
and the things that they do on the side of the face or the brows
Yeah.
just comes off a little plastic looking. And I don't think it did with
No.
Oppenheimer, especially with the level of detail that you can see of those IMAX images.
Absolutely. And Louisa Abel is the one that's being nominated for Oppenheimer in this. So
Yeah.
we'll see. They're up against Society of the Snow, Golda, and Poor Things. So
And
a lot of
Maestro,
competition there.
which we will be reviewing on Friday. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Maestro's in there.
Yeah, so I think with Poor Things, they've got some competition there. At least the movies that we've seen, it only includes
Yeah.
Poor Things at this point. With Willem Dafoe's makeup, I think it's pretty legitimate contender to Oppenheimer for sure. What do you think, Chris?
I think so too, but we haven't seen the other movies as well, so it's hard to compare. But
Yeah.
from what we've seen so far, I kind of think Poor Things has it in the bag with this one. Not to say that Oppenheimer didn't kill it with the makeup and hair. I mean, it kind of blends into the story, which is a compliment in itself. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we've got we've also got to remember that some of those makeup and hairstyling effects are not just on the human characters, right? They're on some of the cadavers and Poor Things, even some of the prop design. The makeup artists will come in to make those dummies that they're using look like actual human beings. And I think in Poor Things, you don't even question it, looking at some of that stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I didn't like about Poor Things, but yeah, makeup and wardrobe, you can't say a lot of
Was
bad
on
things
point. Yeah,
about it.
absolutely.
It's on point for sure. Why don't we move to the next category, Matt? What are we tackling next?
Nominated for Best Production Design, and this goes up against Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, and Poor Things, of course. So some major heavy hitters from what we have seen so far. Chris, I don't know if you got a chance to check out Napoleon whenever it was in theaters.
I haven't seen
I
it.
saw it. It's not my favorite Ridley Scott movie for sure, but as far as production design goes on that movie, it's really hard to tell where the special effects end and the practical effects begin on that movie. A lot of the stuff that you see when they go into Egypt and stuff is amazing. And then you look at the production design, like you talked about on Poor Things, it's crazy detailed. Same thing with Barbie. I know that in Oppenheimer they were going for authenticity. They really filmed at Princeton. They really filmed in his house. Berkeley. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
his actual house in Los Alamos.
Right. Yep. And out there exactly. All the locations are as they really appear. Christopher Nolan's usually pretty strict about that kind of thing. But I got to just say the level of detail that's in something like Barbie, where they're literally making things up, that sand on the beach and that kind of stuff. They're having to invent things that don't actually exist, so I don't know. Oppenheimer, I think, was done really, really well. Obviously, it's been nominated for an Academy Award, but I don't think it's necessarily the winner in this category. What do you think?
Probably not, just because like even with Poor Things, like the production value on that was pretty stunning, and the visuals are pretty stunning too. And how they created those atmospheres, like an on-stage, off-stage kind of thing, with a lot of practical in there too. But yeah, you got to say a lot of good things about Oppenheimer, though. Like, I love the fact that they went to Los Alamos and they were going to film in the actual Los Alamos, but there was a Starbucks in the middle of the city, so they had to recreate a little ways away the entire town and everything, and put it up and everything, and make that. but then they would actually film in the colleges and everything else, in the lecture halls and whatnot. And these places still exist, and it's great to see that.
Yeah.
It's great to see them get out of Hollywood and go to real places, real brick and mortar places, and present that on. And what they can't present from real factual history, they can reproduce and make it look really good. And apparently, when he goes and meets Truman at the end there, that whole set, the set that they were going to use wasn't ready to go. So they actually used the president's Oval Office from Veep in that.
Oh.
So that's the Veep's Oval Office at the end there. And apparently it was... Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, apparently it was disheveled. Like, it was completely messed up. So they had to redo basically the whole set in order to film in there. And they couldn't change. And the reason why they had to use Veep's Oval Office is because Gary Oldman couldn't switch up his schedule. He was only there for a couple of days. So he could only film that one scene. So they had to get him on board, and they weren't ready to go. So they had to just make do with what they did. And they did a great job with that. So, yeah. Good on them for their production value.
So freaking awesome.
So many
I love
elements.
talking about this behind the scenes stuff. So
right.
All right, number 3, nominated for Best Sound Design. I'm calling it Sound Design. It's called Best Sound. Technically.
Yep.
But this stuff is by design. It's really hard to imagine the massive amount of sound design that goes into a movie. Like, all of the background noise, all the footsteps, all the handshakes, every little thing is done after, put in by Foley artists and all this. It's crazy how well those guys do just with the regular natural sounds. But in Oppenheimer, you have to emulate atomic sounds, things that we've never heard before, don't actually produce sound waves, but as an audience, you're expecting some kind of craziness whenever you're viewing an electron whizzing around in its different phases.
I love that. Just hearing the ripple and everything as he imagined the quantum physics and everything in his mind as a young student.
Yeah.
So they did
it was
an
pretty
impressive
incredible.
job with that.
Yeah, and I think same thing with the bomb. Just stroke of genius to show us, what it was like out there at the Trinity test. They're not going to hear the thing necessarily right up front.
No.
Everybody in the theater leaned forward at that moment whenever the bomb went off, and no sound.
Yeah.
It was just like it sucked the energy right out of the room, and everybody was waiting, just viewing the fire, viewing the imagery, and then bam, everybody set back, It was pretty fun. So it goes up in sound design against The Creator, Maestro, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and The Zone of Interest, which we will be reviewing as part of our Best Picture run.
Yep.
So
Not Mission Impossible? Didn't make Best Picture, did it? Dang it.
No, but I think they've got some pretty good sound effects. I mean, some pretty amazing sound effects and visual effects in Mission Impossible. But The Creator as well, I think they did a good job with the AI robots walking around. And it's got kind of a District 9 feel if you haven't seen it before, with a little bit bigger story. But so I don't know. I think it could win. There were a lot of cool sound effects in Oppenheimer, but they're going up against some big contenders. Same thing as the rest of these categories. So who knows?
Very true. Who knows?
All right. Number 4, film editing. Man, I don't think, just in my personal opinion, I'm giving it away here right off the bat, but I don't think anybody stands a chance. Just my own personal thing. What is it with Jennifer Lame as our film editor on Oppenheimer? So I saw a documentary of her editing, and it showed like whatever they're using, Adobe After Effects or something, like the timeline of all the different scenes with the entire movie there. Immense.
Oh, wow.
I can't imagine her job.
I can't imagine doing all this. And I love editing. I think we both do. And just keeping all of that straight, the 3 hours going back and forth between all of that. And
you
doing it in a way.
iMovie?
Right?
Yeah.
I stress on that. Oh
Daunting.
my gosh. But to be able to do that and make this cohesive story throughout, being a very fluid, very easy story with all this convoluted plot and everything else going on, different time frames, yeah, I give it all to Jennifer Lame. I think that she's going to take this award home on
and
March
just
10th.
Knowing how it's not just about, there's many times in the film where one actor in one timeline says something and then they cut to the person that they were just talking about doing something else, right? And it takes more than just that happening in the script. You have to properly time that out so the audience has enough time to let that information sit inside their mind and then bounce when it's appropriate to the next scene. And that's the magic of film editing, is knowing what the audience's response is going to be and going over a billion times with your director and saying, here's what I've got so far. Is it working? Doing it with test audiences, doing it with, small screenings and stuff, and seeing what works, what doesn't, and then knowing as an artist, okay, here's where I need to edit my work, and I think she does an incredible job. I think she's going to win it for sure.
Agreed.
So, and just to let you all know, since we're talking about all of them, it's going against Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Poor Things. So we will have watched all those films by the end of this. Boom. Next up, costume design. Best costume design. Again, authenticity on full display here with the correct hat, the correct suits, the correct dresses. Everything is period appropriate.
Yeah, little placards that they wear, during the Manhattan Project. Just all these little teeny details. Yeah, just looks lived in too. So, yeah, they did
the welding glass goggles, everything that you're seeing, the tool belts at Berkeley and all that kind of stuff. Very lived in. So you have to do more than just buy, costumes.
Yeah.
In many cases on these films, they're not buying them; they're making them. And they're tailoring them to the actors to make them not just fit their frames, but make them look skinnier, make them look bigger, make them look maybe overweight or something compared to what their character looked like in real life. And all of that takes a lot of talent on part of the costume designer. So, but they're going against Barbie on this one. I don't know. That's going to be a tough match right there.
Yeah.
Plus, Poor Things. We talked about the costume design and what it means for Bella's character as she's going through her development.
Also very good in costumes.
Yes, along with Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon. So I think you've got the historical films there.
You got three historical films there. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll have the authenticity, but I think as far as creativity goes, you're going to have a movie like Barbie or Poor Things win in this category.
Yeah. Which one do you think? I think
I think they'll give it to Exactly. Yeah, I think they'll give it to Poor Things because the costumes mean more than just something to wear. It means that
part of the story.
Exactly. Yeah. So next up is cinematography. Geez, we're getting to the really tough contenders here. So it's going up against other films: El Conde, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, and Poor Things. What do you think of Oppenheimer compared to those films?
I think Oppenheimer has in the bag, even though I haven't seen El Conde or Maestro yet.
Yeah.
How do we say it? Hoyt van Hoytema.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I'm glad you took it.
Beautifully done. The cinematography in this is gorgeous. And to do that with IMAX bulky cameras and everything, and to get those shots and to get everything that they were able to show in composite together, I can't say enough good things. And that's one of the things I love about Christopher Nolan. He very much has the best cinematography out there when it comes to this, and he hired the best because she nailed it. I think she's going to go home with the award for this.
Well, and so we really have to emphasize that, Christopher Nolan, of course, he loves to film on IMAX cameras. Those things are huge. Yep. Those things are noisy. So again, sound design, going back to this just for a brief minute, sound designer has to work past all the noise that an IMAX camera makes. A lot of times they would film scenes with an IMAX camera, and then they would film it with a regular film camera, the actors having to just do their thing, and then the sound designer going in and drawing sound clips off of whichever one would work that had the least amount of ambient noise from the cameras. And again, just a daunting job. But back to cinematography, those cameras are filming essentially a talking head movie. I mean, there are some epic scenes where we've got big landscapes, big effects going on, but not that many compared to Christopher Nolan's films like Tenet or Dark Knight or any of the Batman movies. This is a personal picture, but filmed on huge cameras bigger than the framed poster behind me. Not only that, they're also filming in a microscopic space. So, as happens on a lot of Christopher Nolan movies, things are having to be invented in order to make them work. And so when it comes to the cinematographers, they literally were having to make lenses in order for certain shots using IMAX cameras on this film were going to work. That included the macro filming that you see anytime there's an effect where Oppenheimer is, thinking of some atomic level event going on, the sparkly things in front of the camera, the electrons whipping around. There you go. These things are not computer generated. This is all practical effect.
Practical. Yeah.
In order to get that image that you're seeing right there as it is, what they had to do was invent a microscope lens that can go onto the end of an IMAX camera, which normally is filming it at 70 millimeter film stock, which is huge. So they also had to come up with an adapter that goes from that size of camera down to the microscope lens at the very end of it. Not only that, a lot of this effect, you'll notice, has sort of a blue hue to it. The reason for that is because much of it is filmed underwater. So they had to make the whole thing also go underwater for some of these things. It's just incredible what the cinematographers had to come up with to make this work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think hands down, knowing all the technical details, and I don't know all the technical details behind it, but a lot of the Academy members might have a better idea, and they have to give Oppenheimer the award here, I think.
Yeah. And I do apologize. Hoyt van Hoytema is a guy. I think I said she earlier.
Oh,
it's he.
okay.
But he definitely should go home with the award this year. I absolutely agree. Yep.
Yeah. What was interesting is that our visual effects category did not warrant Oppenheimer a nomination here. The other films for visual effects, The Creator, Godzilla -1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mission Impossible, and Napoleon. So all good films with lots of special effects that are very nice to watch. Yeah, but why not Oppenheimer? It's amazing what they had to do practically in front of the camera.
Christopher Nolan said that they did not use any CGI in this film. They did compositing and things like that to hone it in and put things together. But that alone, I think, warrants it to at least be nominated because, my God. To me, doing that stuff is far more valuable and just looks so unique in the picture quality and what they were able to provide.
And this shot right here goes to the level of detail that's in the film. This is a picture of the first wave of the atomic blast coming out, but the little plume that you're seeing draw out to the, it's kind of going towards the lower left-hand corner of the screen, that is meant to be the stream of fire coming off the ropes that hold the tower that held the Trinity bomb up there. And I mean, why, as a practical effects coordinator, would you even think to to create something like this to be filmed? But because it occurred in the actual Trinity test, the fire on that rope going faster than the actual explosion itself, they put it in the movie, and it looks amazing, and it's authentic to what actually occurred. So
Yeah.
I really think that along with cinematography, this film should have been nominated for Best Visual Effects.
It definitely does. And everybody who worked on this to make these effects so brilliant and amazing and beautiful. Hats off to you guys. You definitely earn a spot in my book as best visual effects. So
yeah, let's talk a little bit about that explosion, because obviously
yeah,
it's not a real nuclear blast, but as Chris said, it's not a visual effect. By that well, it is a visual effect, but it's not a computer generated visual effect. So there's no animation to it. What it is a series of 3 explosions occurring in rapid sequence to each other. The first explosion giving the bright atomic blast that we're all used to, the one you wear the welder's goggles not to get blinded by the light, so to speak. And then 0.2 of a second later, I'm sorry, the first one is the initial blast. The second one is that flash with the magnesium. And then the third one is a pillar of fire being blown up with kerosene and gasoline from barrels that are forcing the explosion up in a mushroom cloud, shape like we're all familiar with seeing from the actual Trinity tests. Chris, do you have footage of what the real nuclear blast looked like? This is what the actual Trinity tests look like on the day of the event. So let's see it compared to.
So hold on to your butts.
All right.
Let's get it big. Let's get it big for you guys.
Look at that. That is the actual real footage of the first atomic bomb ever detonated.
Woo!
So, yes, what we got in the actual movie, I think emulates that pretty well. For my own opinion, seeing the actual footage is more impressive, but knowing what they had to technically do in order to create that day of course, it's a much smaller explosion. Again, they can't recreate the ferocity of an atomic blast with a bunch of actors standing around, because in some of those shots, you see the actors watching it. In order to get those shots, they had the Trinity Tower actually built out there. You see the people walking on it. All that was created as a real set piece. And they had basically the blast going on in between the tower, the actors, and then the bomb going off in the middle. So it looks bigger than it actually is.
Perspective.
Because, consumes the tower from your perspective as the audience. And I think it worked very well. It was something to see. It was why you go to the movies. One of the reasons, anyway. So.
And apparently, some fans thought that they actually let Christopher Nolan film an actual nuclear explosion in the desert.
Some of the people I've talked to down here said, "Oh yeah, didn't they do that?" Like, I know it looks like it, but nope, that was all just the magic.
Quite a few hoops.
Yeah. Right. So next category here, Chris, you're gonna love this one: Best Original Score.
Oh,
so
yes.
Oppenheimer going up against American Fiction, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny for 91-year-old John Williams himself.
Ooh, Johnny Williams.
Killers of the Flower Moon. Poor Things. I can't believe it's even listed here.
Justin Fendrix. Yes.
Who's buying this soundtrack for Poor Things? Listening to it on the way to work,
Yeah, it'll wake you up in the morning, that's for sure.
Yeah, as good as an alarm. But what do you think of Oppenheimer compared to those films?
Oh my gosh. And not enough has to be said about John Williams and the amazing music that he's produced over his career.
Yeah. Not to mention that Indiana Jones march. I mean, everybody can whistle that thing from 1-year-old to 80.
But if we're going to look at an original score and look at these movies as individual movies and the scores that are accompanied to these films and the stories and how well they fit into the motion picture that we're watching, Oppenheimer, Ludwig Göransson, who did the score for Oppenheimer. This is his second feature with Christopher Nolan. He got on board with Tenet, and he's done Oppenheimer now with him. He has given us something that has gone beyond even his own filmography, because he's done a lot of really cool stuff. He's won Academy Awards and Grammys for Black Panther. He did the score on that. And he's also done The Mandalorian, which I love. And he did a little bit of Book of Boba Fett, too, and all that good stuff, as well as Tenet, and now Oppenheimer. And he has just nailed it out of the park. And the only suggestion that Christopher Nolan gave Ludwig Göransson was that he really wanted him to focus on the violin. He wanted Oppenheimer to be associated with the violin. And the really nice thing about that is Ludwig Göransson is actually married to an expert violinist. Serena is his wife. So he brought her aboard. Yeah, exactly. So he brought her aboard, and they came up with this score together and just presented something beautifully done. And I remember there's this one scene at the beginning when he first goes to Berkeley to teach quantum physics, and he has the one student. What's portrayed there is you have that singular violin, and then you have two when it has the one student. And as soon as they show multiple students in there, you have a quartet of violins in there. And
I didn't notice that.
It's beautifully done. It's brilliantly done. And the way that he kind of likened this was, the way he was creating this score was, you can have these beautifully romantic melodic pieces that are moving throughout your movie, but then violins are also used very heavily in horror and can be used to rattle things up. And he wanted to have that kind of contrast, because there is a little bit of a horror to this film when it comes to the realization after the bomb goes off, after the jubilation and everything kind of hits a tone and goes down. And he kind of brings that into the overall score. And the one really crazy thing too is there's no drums, there's no percussion with any of the music that they have here. The only things that they kind of use for percussion on this is a ticking time clock whenever they're setting up the bomb and everything. So you hear the ticking in the background, the tick, 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 tick. And then the only other thing that you have is the stomping of the feet, which Oppenheimer internalizes when he's about to give his speech and everything, which is really cool. So he uses all these elements brilliantly in this. He had over 3 hours of music ready to go for this film and everything. So the nice thing too is, like, he got to read the script with Christopher Nolan first, and then the only suggestion he gave was that, hey, I want Oppenheimer to have the violin. So he had free reign to make whatever he wanted. With Tenet, he had a lot more rules and things, and what he can do and what he couldn't do. He wanted to do a lot more reversal and different types of playing around with music in reverse and whatnot. But he wasn't able to do that. Christopher Nolan was like, no, let's not go there. But for this one, he's like, do what you feel is best, and he knocked it out of the park. He really did. So I think that this is a beautiful score. I've listened to the soundtrack multiple times, and Ludwig Göransson, he's at the top of his game. He's worth every frickin' penny as a composer. So I think that he's going home with this award.
I think so too. I really hope so. I mean, I was, John Williams being at 91 years of age, I'd love to see him get at least one more here. The guy is a living legend. But I think Ludwig Göransson deserves it for this movie, just in how the music is used to basically take the audience mentally through the journey that you're seeing in front of you, ramping up the tension as only the music can do. The music, that building violin run as the bomb is being placed in the tower, as it's time to go, as the flares go up, marking 20 minutes and 2 minutes. Only the music can drive the tension that got the audience that I was with to then sit up whenever it's gone. Then the silence coming after all of that tension finally being released in that moment, it could only have occurred with the music that came before it. So
and funny thing too is he actually had a different piece, a different composition for that specific scene, and so they played the first director's cut for them, and he's like, I can do something else with that. And so Ludwig Göransson went back and created this other piece that does ramp up the tension a lot more and makes you feel that way. So I'm so glad that he took another pass at that. So I think it made all the difference.
I think so too. I think you hear something similar in movies like Black Swan, the ballet movie with is it Natalie Portman? I forgot. I forgot the name. Mila Kunis. And again, the way that violins are used in classical music to build tension is on display here as well, with how he composes some of the lines of these pieces. And I think it helps. It puts you in the period mindset, but it also creates a significant amount of tension. So even though you're seeing something, period pieces by themselves can be a little bit alienating. We kind of see the chromograph image of what history is in our minds. But to put us in the seat of the people that went through that, you have to create a level of familiarity and a level of connectedness that sometimes music is the only way to do it. And I think that Ludwig does his part to help tie us in as audience members to what's going on screen.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
Next up, number 8, Best Adapted Screenplay. All right. This goes in competition with American Fiction, Barbie, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. So the rest of them I can understand why it's adapted screenplay. I'm not sure why Barbie is adapted, but
I know.
because they have a whole separate category, folks, for Best Original Screenplay. So adapted meaning that there's some kind of work that the screenwriters have taken as
that's a leap.
as the source material. In this case, though, Christopher Nolan writing the movie and adapting it from American Prometheus.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about this, Chris? Does he deserve it compared to those other movies?
100% he deserves it for this movie, for this adaptation from American Prometheus. And both you and I know from reading the book, listening to the book. Go ahead and go get Audible. They're not sponsoring us, but please do sponsor us eventually because we love you, Audible. It's the
helps
best
us
thing
a lot
ever.
in this research for sure.
It really does. But yeah, being able to take that book, taking the essential bones and pieces of that, and creating this story around Oppenheimer, this first-person perspective too. And this is his first movie, Christopher Nolan's first movie, where he is actually giving the first-person perspective on a character like Oppenheimer. Brilliant. I mean, just beautifully done. The dialogue, it's just wonderful. I can't say enough good things about this. Christopher Nolan and he's wanted to do an Oppenheimer piece for 20 years now. So he put the passion into this project, and you can tell through his writing, and he wrote it really quickly too. As soon as he read American Prometheus, I think I forget who gave it to him, but he was working on Tenet.
He was working on Tenet, and at the end of that, as a wrap gif, Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson go.
It's kind of a funny story because Robert Pattinson, at the same time he's filming Tenet with Christopher Nolan, he goes and disappears, auditions for the Batman. Doesn't want to tell Christopher Nolan about it because obviously Christopher Nolan's got some stake in the Batman game. Yeah. But it comes out anyway. Christopher Nolan sort of makes a joke of it. And really, they establish a friendship, as often happens between actors and directors. So at the end of it, as a parting gift, he gives him not only American Prometheus, but copies of many of the speeches made by Oppenheimer to the American public or to the people at Los Alamos. And from those words, Christopher Nolan adapts this screenplay, which takes those words from history and puts them right on the screen for you, which along with the set design, knowing that the actors are portraying these historical figures that actually said those exact words in those exact places, is amazing. It's crazy the level of detail that he took from the book and put it into a cohesive movie. The book could have been a mini series easily. Could have been an entire 10 episode seasons worth of an HBO show or something like that. But instead, he has 3 hours to tell you this immense story that occurs over decades. and he does it with the actual words of the characters involved. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I don't know how he does
He
it.
is a master of his craft. Screenplay, directing, just another level. Yeah. I will be overjoyed and so happy for him to get this award because he deserves it. So
Yeah.
I don't see anybody else beating him in this category.
Speaking of Christopher Nolan, the 9th award, Best Director. Does he get it? Versus Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things, Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, or Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall. Tough. Very tough.
And the only one that I think is really up against is Martin Scorsese. You know, when it comes to those.
We haven't seen Anatomy of a Fall or Zone of Interest yet. But I know what I think Christopher Nolan deserves it for is because of his body of work progressing to this film. You can tell that he gets better and better and better at things. Every single one of his films, he likes telling the story of a man or a central character obsessed with something, right? So you've got that on display in Oppenheimer. You've got sort of his period work that he's done in things like The Prestige. You've got his non-linear chronology to the editing and how he tells a story on display in pretty much all of his movies. But from the very beginning, first big one that everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people into film know, Memento, right? I know it's not his first full-length feature, but Memento is a big one that puts the non-linear storytelling on display, right? So he's just getting better and better at a lot of these things, and I think Oppenheimer is literally the pinnacle of a man who did not start out in the film industry, self-made, gets into this thing, doesn't go to film school, just loves freaking movies, and now he's making some of the best out there. And I think this one deserves him the Best Director credit for all of that stuff, for all of the things that he threw into the script, all of the things that he did on set. He won't allow chairs on his set. He won't allow cell phones on his set because he is so concerned with efficiency and with everybody, if you're behind the camera or in front of it, that you are paying attention. And so literally, Anne Hathaway, Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr. said, unless you're sitting down in front of the camera, there's no place to sit down behind it because you better be ready to go when it's your turn. So I think he's a master of his craft. And I think that, yes, it's going to be really hard going up against Martin Scorsese here. Killers of the Flower Moon is an excellent movie. So I can understand if he doesn't win. But one more thing that might be in his favor is he just took home the Directors Guild of America Award for Best Director 2023. That usually 9 times out of 10, I think it is what they said, is the predictor of Best Director for the Academy Awards. That's other directors voted him as the Best Director of the Year. So I think that goes a lot of the way. Those directors usually are SAG members or Academy people who vote. And so I think he's got it in the bag.
Right. He even, Steven Spielberg, he screened Oppenheimer for him. And I guess the whole time Christopher Nolan was just watching Steven Spielberg watch his movie. And he was so giddy about it. But even he gave him high praise for this. A lot of critics are giving this almost damn near perfect scores. And like you said, this is the culmination of a man that has perfected his craft. This is, I'm not going to lie, this is my fucking favorite director, and I love Christopher Nolan more than any other director. Actors are dying to work with this guy. I mean, Matt Damon, he was not supposed to be in anything. He's like, apparently he's in like couples therapy, and he wouldn't do any of these things. The one caveat is he said, if it's for Christopher Nolan, I'm coming back. And that's the only exception to the rule.
Of course he gets the call.
And of course he gets the call. But
so not
that
best
says a lot.
director. when it comes to Mrs. Damon. I'm sorry, I don't know her name.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure
But
she agrees too. She had to
she
sign
has
off
to
on
be
that
proud
too.
of this movie. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
absolutely.
But yeah, he definitely deserves this. It will be a big letdown if he doesn't get Best Director for this film, because my God, the man is doing so much for film. And who is doing that? I mean, he went through hoops trying to get people back in theaters, which both you and I really liked the idea of getting back to the theater and everything else. But for Tenet and everything, they wanted to release it on video on demand as well in theaters, and he really was upset about that, and he didn't want that to happen, and it got pushed back. And that's one of the reasons why he left Warner Brothers, the studio he's been working with since Memento, and now he's working with the Universal to produce Oppenheimer. Because,
which is where really, even though it's a talking heads movie, and I hate saying that because it paints a picture of the film that I don't like, but the thing has a lot more sitting and talking moments in it than it does action, but it's still meant to be seen on the biggest screen possible, with the biggest speakers possible, because of that sound and that score. The acting that's on display, seeing it up close, seeing people sweat, making themselves sweat whenever they're in tense moments, making themselves cry and get angry, and all these things that are so on point. You owe it to yourself. I know that with a lot of the Academy Award movies going up, possible contenders for Best Picture here in just a month, many of them are coming back to theaters. So if you can, try to find Oppenheimer showing in a theater near you. You will not regret it.
You will know. Yeah. And if I can see it back in theaters, I will go there in a hot minute for sure.
You remember, I didn't think that first time I saw it. I thought, just with having read the book, this is a good movie, but something that didn't need to be seen in theaters. If you're wondering, there is only one nuclear bomb that gets blown up during the course of this 3-hour-long movie, but that is just one of the amazing things that you will see during the course of that time. So, all right. Next up, number 10, Best Supporting Actress, Emily Blunt. Going up against Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple, America Ferrera for Barbie, Jodie Foster for Nyad, and Davine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. So, Emily Blunt always does a great job. Loved her with Cillian Murphy in The Quiet Place 2, right? Not the first time that they've shared the screen together. Here they're playing
There's
husband
our connection.
and wife. Oh, is that what you're going for?
No.
With part of the jump. I know, I was trying to think of those.
Yeah, me too. Not a whole lot this time around.
So Emily Blunt's done an amazing job, right? Takes over the role from not Jodie Foster, who we're thinking of. Played Mary Poppins. She took over the role from Julie Andrews. There we go.
Oh, for Mary Poppins, yeah.
Yes. But she plays people like Mary Poppins, and then she goes and plays somebody like Kitty Oppenheimer. For those of you that don't know, Kitty Oppenheimer in real life, unfortunately, alcoholic, had some major depression issues, struggled with her, parenting duties, struggled with being a trained biologist and not being able to use those talents, right? Basically, she becomes a series of wives for 3 different men, I believe, throughout the course of her life. And so Emily Blunt is tasked with playing this very complex, very angry character. There's actually a scene towards about 2/3 of the way in where Jean Tatlock dies or is killed, depending on your interpretation of the moment.
Which they kind of show you both.
Right, exactly. There is evidence to support both, going off on a little bit of a tangent, but read the book for more detail about that. And Colonel Pash's possible involvement. Anyway, so in that moment that she discovers Oppenheimer in the forest, basically depressed after hearing the news of Jean Tatlock's death,
Yep.
she basically jostles him back into gaining his bearings. The extended portion of that scene included Emily Blunt actually hitting Cillian Murphy a bunch of times because, again, they talk
Poor
about
Cillian.
they talk about that being part of the dynamic, though, between
Yeah.
Kitty and Robert,
Yeah.
as you know, it was sometimes an abusive relationship, unfortunately.
Yeah, and she
So
would actually throw things at him all the time, and they do show that in the movie as well. You know,
yeah,
she'll throw glasses at him and stuff like that. So it wasn't a perfect relationship, but yeah, Emily Blunt did quite an amazing job dealing with that and the struggles and the stress. And God, I can't even imagine just being there in that, you know, interrogation and everything, and them bringing up the affair with Jean
right.
Tatlock and everything, and just having to listen to that as your partner is explaining that they stepped out on you, and it's just like, and that,
Those words,
you know,
"Why don't you fight?" drawn directly
yeah,
from journal entries. It's all
mm-hmm.
authentic. She was very frustrated with Robert for all of that stuff in the trial.
Yeah, yep. But she stuck
So,
with him too.
yeah, it's one of the big mysteries of his life. The infidelities were there, even more so than what was shown in the movie.
Yeah,
He had
there's
other
more.
mistresses. Yeah, some of them, I think Ruth was alluded to in the movie.
Ruth, yep.
Yeah, but there was even more, and she stuck by him through all of that,
All of it.
in misery, I'm sure. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's not to suggest that Kitty was perfect or Robert was perfect. These are flawed human beings in charge
Very
of an
much.
immense amount of power. And yeah, so I think Emily Blunt did a great job. I don't know if she will get it. Now, one of the movies on this list, Naiad, I have not seen. It's about a woman that tries to swim the English Channel, and Jodie Foster is nominated for Best Supporting Actress in that movie. I want to see it just because of the subject material, but I've heard that just like she is doing with this season of True Detective, that Jodie Foster knocked it out of the park in Naiad as well. So you might want to check that movie out if you get time.
Yeah. No,
So.
like we'll see. I'm not sure if she'll win in this one either, but
Yeah.
she did
Yeah,
a great
she doesn't
job in
have
Oppenheimer.
right. She does a great job, but she doesn't have quite as prominent a role as like America Ferrera and Barbie. So it may
Right.
just be almost a question of screen time, which I mean, who knows? You compare it back to
Maybe.
back, 3-hour movie. Emily Blunt might have it, but
I know. Yeah.
I think
Comparing America Ferrera to Emily Blunt and these two roles, I would pick Emily Blunt.
yeah, but it's
Over
like an
America
apples and
Ferrera.
oranges. I don't know how the
I
Academy
yeah.
members do it, but
No.
don't envy them their task. Number 11, Best Supporting Actor. This goes, of course, to
Ooh,
the
our man.
one and only Robert
One and
De Niro. Oh, sorry,
No.
Robert Downey Jr.
The other one.
Yeah. So
The guy from Killers of the Flower Moon.
yeah.
That you kept talking about.
Yeah, he looks a little bit like him thanks to the incredible makeup and hairstyling throughout the course of the film. But no, Robert Downey Jr. playing against type, I would say here, because
Oh yeah.
Christopher Nolan believed in him and because Robert Downey Jr. really wanted to be a part of this movie.
Yeah.
I've watched several interviews with Robert Downey Jr. saying how Christopher Nolan would give him very subtle direction, but would ask him to push it a little bit further in some scenes. They would take it again, and he was grateful to that because he wanted a challenging role. He wanted a
he got
character
it.
that was not likable. He did. He got it. He actually had an affection for this character before the movie was brought to him. He is a little bit of an amateur historian himself and knew a lot about the littler, sort of lesser known historical figures that were involved in the Manhattan Project and the H-bomb project and all the stuff that occurred afterwards. So Lewis Strauss being a big part of that. Robert Downey Jr. wanted to play him and does so with lots of nuance. I loved seeing him in this role.
Oh, I can't say enough good things about him in this role as Lewis Strauss. And even though I knew what was coming and everything, still, throughout the movie, I couldn't help but, have some sympathy for his character throughout it. And that's just because of Robert Downey Jr.'s got something. He's had it all along. That's why he was so good as Iron Man. He's just got this presence and this spark. I don't know what it is, but he really does. And he has pushed himself beyond with this role, which is amazing.
We've been doing it, though. The thing that would actually piss the real Lewis Strauss off is pronouncing his name Strauss. And they even put it in the movie several times. It's Strauss. And that was something
that's the southern way to pronounce it.
Right. Throughout the book, American Prometheus, several of these lines that Robert Downey Jr. says are what Lewis Strauss really, really said. He was actually very offended by Oppenheimer not paying his son and his son's wife much attention.
Oh, yeah.
At that party when they were first introduced. He was very upset about Einstein's snub there after Robert talked to him and supposedly said something to make him think less of Mr. Strauss. But so those are things drawn directly from history, and I think that Robert Downey Jr. nails those moments and sort of just the subtle, like you can tell he's upset about it, but he's also a professional guy, doesn't want to give too much away. But then it reaches a boil as the film goes on, and he starts, yelling these things that he has been enraged about Robert Oppenheimer for so long. And I thought, it couldn't have been done any better than what Robert Downey Jr. delivers.
Yeah, true. And it's crazy too, because, with Oppenheimer, he would kind of try to downplay his Jewish heritage as well too, and that's what Lewis Strauss tried to do as well. That's why he would pronounce it Strauss instead of Strauss as well. And it's so funny that they were similar in that aspect but so different in others.
Anti-Semitism was a huge thing back then. And in the academic community as well, and that's these guys they had to hide their heritage a little bit. And it produced a lot of angst, not always between just the perpetrators of the anti-Semitism, but between the different Jewish people as well. And in this case, Oppenheimer and Strauss. So Robert Downey Jr. is going up against Sterling K. Brown for American Fiction, Robert De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon.
There you go. Got it right.
The man who is definitely Ken Nuff, Ryan Gosling for Barbie, and Mark Ruffalo for Poor Things. I think Ruffalo gets it in a landslide.
You think so? Okay. I disagree, but I never want to see Mark Ruffalo's performance ever again in Poor Things.
From the moment he steps on the screen. He had a tough job.
I have PTSD from those scenes with Mark Ruffalo.
I bet you Mark Ruffalo is a very charming individual in real life.
I bet. But now there are scenes seared in my brain
You're
that
gonna
need
imagine
to leave.
him in a corset the next time that you see an interview with him on, on anything.
No thanks.
But that's going to be a tough category. That really is. I think all those guys, we've seen them all at this point, and they all deliver amazing performances. So it's going to be
Robert
tough.
Downey Jr. is going home with
RDJ.
the Oscar. I don't think so. I think he's going home with the Oscar. I think it's in the bag. He's got this. He's going home.
Think about the level of acting talent that comes into a scene where you literally have to spank Leonardo DiCaprio.
I know. It's I'm not saying
face.
I'm not Matt. I'm not saying it's not close. Robert De Niro did an amazing job spanking.
I can't believe
Leonardo
we did not
DiCaprio.
talk about that scene during that review. We're like, oh man, why did we forget about that?
Oh boy, maybe because we wanted to forget about that. But no, he did a great job at that.
I think Leonardo DiCaprio needs to be in the next category that I'm going to mention here, simply because every single one of these movies that he's in, they make him do some humiliating
something like that. Yeah.
Think about Wolf of Wall
I
Street
got
and
spanked for
crawling
nothing.
across the ground and being a drug addict. Like now he gets spanked in this one. He gets mounted and raped by a bear in Remnant. Like, oh my gosh, this guy is doing anything and everything he can for one of these awards.
Yeah.
But anyway, so moving on to our 12th nomination, Best Actor for Cillian Murphy, going up against Bradley Cooper as Leonard Bernstein and Maestro, Coleman Domingo and Rustin, Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers, and Jeffrey Wright in American Fiction. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Cillian. I think he transforms into Oppenheimer, no question. The voice, just watch one interview with Cillian Murphy and you're like, oh, the dude's Irish, if you can't figure that out from his name. But he sounds nothing like Oppenheimer, and in any of the rest of his movies. Check out The Quiet Place too. Check out any of the Nolan movies where he plays a scarecrow. He doesn't sound anything like his character in Oppenheimer.
No.
So yeah, I think he does an amazing job. I think the close-ups, I think the tension, those scenes where he's up giving his speeches and the background is kind of shaking and stuff. Did you know that was a practical effect, by the way?
Oh, I
couldn't believe it. What they did to make that, this is tangential again, but he is actually standing at that podium. They are projecting an image of what the background was on a screen in front of it. And then they're literally vibrating it at an alternating rate compared to the rate that the film is being developed, I guess you could say, or light is touching the film. In order to make that shakiness, and they can control it, obviously, as things get more and more tense and he's starting to feel the pressure. All of that's practical, so it helps an actor's performance, I'm sure, but he still has to deliver those lines with the gusto that Oppenheimer had to do it in real life in order to, rouse up the crowd, but at the same time thinking in his mind the horribleness that he just unleashed on the world. How does another human being tap into the mindset of the actual person that did that? I don't know, but you got to hand it to Cillian Murphy for doing it perfectly, man. I think.
And I'm overjoyed that Cillian Murphy finally got a starring role in Christopher Nolan's films. He's always portrayed some side role in his movies, and he's always been ready to go and just wanting to have a lead role in one of these films. And as soon as he knew he was going to do Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan, first call was to Cillian, and he got it. Yeah. And he went to work. He read all the literature that he could. He read a whole lot of stuff to get ready for this role. He slimmed down quite a bit to look like Oppenheimer. Man, and he did. He got the voice down. He got the mannerisms down. And I believe he talked to somebody that took lectures from Oppenheimer to get a sense of who Oppenheimer was and his mannerisms and how he would act and how he would teach in his lectures. He got all that down. And he did a phenomenal job with it. Cillian Murphy, I want him to win this. I haven't seen Bradley Cooper and Maestro yet, so maybe that's a more standout performance to me. But right now, I think that Cillian Murphy also walking home with Best Actor.
I have actually heard that the main two contenders, and this is a surprise to me, is Cillian Murphy and Paul Giamatti from The Holdovers. Paul Giamatti does an incredible job. Another actor that transforms into whatever character he is portraying. He is never the same Paul Giamatti, except for maybe in his guest role as the CD editing guy in his episode of 30 Rock, which if you haven't seen it, just go and he's a Civil War reenactor, and he really gets into being shot and all sorts of stupidness. But no, so it's going to be interesting to watch The Holdovers, watch Maestro, and see how it compares to Cillian's performance here. But so far, I think that Cillian did an incredible job, and like you said, highly researched. even if you just look at the footage that everybody's seen of Oppenheimer delivering, the famous lines about being the destroyer of worlds, the way that he's grabbing his freaking forehead and the bridge of his nose is the same way that Cillian does it in the movie, and he puts it in there a bunch of different times. It's just, it's incredible to watch.
This movie is centered around Oppenheimer, and it doesn't work without Cillian Murphy. Like, this movie would not work without that performance. So, yeah.
It's like saying, do Forrest Gump with somebody else.
Without Tom
you
Hanks,
can't imagine, right? You can't imagine anybody but Tom Hanks doing that role.
No.
I can't imagine anybody but Cillian Murphy doing this. It's just,
true.
It had to be him. So, all of that leading to, of course, final 13th nomination for Best Picture. I'm going to list them off because we're halfway through now. This is our 5th review. The Academy Award nominated Best Picture movies are American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. Somebody couldn't make up their freaking mind this year. But
I know, seriously.
Here we are, 10 films nominated.
Jeez.
And I think, for my money, it's Oppenheimer this year. But
I have to agree. This this meets all of my check marks of just an amazing movie. Out of all the things that we've watched so far, this is the one I was most excited to rewatch too. This is the one that just feels good. It feels like the best meal I've ever had going into it. And we've covered it all. We've covered it all. Why, the special effects are amazing, the story, the adaptation from the book, all the amazing historical insights that were very, very accurate. And the acting,
sound,
all of it. Just
so well-rounded.
Another level.
A pinnacle of success for Christopher Nolan. I think the best movie of the year. And I'm going to say it by far. I love Killers of the Flower Moon for its own right.
Same.
But I think that this movie took the art of filmmaking to another level with what they had to do to get the cinematography that they did, what they had to do to get the score, the sound design, the makeup, all of that stuff on point with the historical accuracy looped in, because you know that scientists and historians are their own critics, not their own critics, but are critics at another level, because they can come out to audiences afterwards and say, oh, this is fake. But they can't say that about this movie. There's only there's no composite characters in here. Christopher Nolan was very specific, said, I'm not going to group these scientists into one clumpy character. I'm not going to take a group of them and because these guys are at the top of their profession. That's why they're in the Manhattan Project. He said it. He was not going to disrespect them by having one actor play 5 scientists. So I think that level of concern of getting it right deserves him a seat at the table. I think all of this stuff put together deserves him the Best Picture award this year. And man, if he doesn't get it, it'll be just like whenever I swore the same exact things about Saving Private Ryan, and they gave it to Shakespeare in Love instead. And I was like, what?
I know.
But
yeah.
So it does happen. And with 10 nominees,
I think it would be even bigger upset, though, if Oppenheimer doesn't get it. It's hard to beat. It's hard
Barbie's
to beat.
a contender. Killers of the Flower
Jesus.
Moon. I'm telling you, we're going to be sitting here on March 11th with our hands in our hats.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh. So with that said, do we want to go into our rating?
Yes, at long last. Thank you for hanging with us if you did so far, going through all those nominations.
Not 3 hours, though. It's only an
hour
and a half, guys. This is great.
All right. So here we go. What do you give it on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm so happy that I get to do this, because I rarely get to do this, and I rarely have a movie where I can do this. But for me, and seeing it again, and watching it, and talking to you about it, and going through it, I only love this movie all the more. I only love everything about this all the more. There's nothing I would have changed about this movie. This is what I love about Christopher Nolan. He's at the peak of what he's doing with his craft. This, to me, is a 10 out of 10.
All the way. Perfect
All
film,
the
brother. I
Perfect
cannot
film.
agree with you more. This does not, this is something that I should quantify for the audience and just say it's not something that we say just, every fifth review.
No. Yeah, right?
Giving a movie a perfect score puts it in our minds in the upper echelon of films that's just it's almost impossible to achieve historically.
Yeah.
Maybe you and I could name 5 other films that we think are absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Citizen
I
Kane
think,
comes to mind, and that sits alongside something
see, and
like
I don't even
Oppenheimer to me.
consider Citizen
Oh,
Kane
you
huge
don't?
technical. Yeah, I don't consider it a perfect film. I think that it is absolutely like a 9.9 out of 10 for me, but I think there are things in it that I'm no Orson Welles, but
Bad. Yeah.
I think that they, just for my
For the
personal
time.
taste, could have done a little bit
Yeah.
different. And even when Oppenheimer first came out, I didn't think it
Mhm.
was a perfect movie. I thought this is a niche movie. I really liked it, but because I had read the book before, I was mentally scrambled going through the details in my head throughout the bulk of the film, and it was not the experience that I needed to have. Seeing it the second time, I have absolutely nothing that I can say against it. It's the perfect film for what it is trying to be, and it goes above and beyond that. It is way more than a historical biopic. And
Mhm.
I think because of that, because films that come after this can be made better because of the advances that they made. I think if you look at the script and go back a second and third time, watch the duality in the lines said by the characters, the moments that occur twice. There's so many lines that are said twice in the movie. There's so many moments that happen twice in the movie. But by the second time that they occur, it's a totally different meaning. His
Mhm.
friend giving him food happens twice in the movie. So many times, like when he's talking about storms over Los Alamos, happens twice in the movie.
Yep.
It's all through the film. Do yourself a favor, watch it under the lens of all the information that we gave you in this review. And knowing this stuff, go in and watch the technical and cinematic and artful achievement that this film really is. It's perfect.
Right. It is. It is perfect.
So
Now I've become death, the destroyer of worlds.
from the original Sanskrit, can't believe it. Crazy. So amazing moment in history, amazing film. We have said pretty much everything that we can say about it. But you got anything else? We could probably just sit here and ruminate for another hour and a half. But let's do them all a favor and
Yeah,
wrap
no.
it up.
Yeah, I think we got it all, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, on that note, let's go ahead and thank all the people that joined in today. We got Not Your Status Quo came in. They were waiting for this review from us, so thank
Sorry
you.
it was not as succinct as the reviews we see on your channel, but couldn't fit it all into 5 to 10 minutes. But I'd love to.
Oh, you mean Attack on
get
Show?
your take.
This is Not Your Status Quo.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Not Your Status Quo. I'm sorry, but still would love to get your take on it, gentlemen over there. Love watching your stuff. Yeah, so let us know your thoughts of this brilliant piece of filmmaking.
Right. Keith says this movie was the bomb.
Oh,
I had to get that.
Got to put in a dad joke in Fatherly Fandom for sure.
He better win, or we match at dawn, march at dawn. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, they better win most of these categories, or we march at dawn. That's right.
Yeah.
Not Your Status Quo says we march at dawn. Doug says, I agree with Matt. It needs to be watched multiple times. Yes, it does. And it just gets better and better. You pick up so much more on your second viewing, your third viewing. Well, and that's a sign of such a great movie, is one that you can continue to come back to and get something else out of. I love that. Doug says, such an excellent film, though. Totally is. Agreed. Not Your Status Quo says, this movie was tremendous. I agree with both of you. All right. Excellent. So
yeah. Love the
Those
comments,
are all the
everyone.
comments.
Love that you joined us today.
Yeah, me
So-
too. It's great having you guys. So
Yeah.
next up, what's next up for us here at Fatherly Fan?
Well,
Matt?
yeah, so we're going to be reviewing Maestro. Watch it with us this week if you want on Netflix. Netflix only. There are a couple of theaters that will have Maestro out coming next weekend and the following weekend throughout the country. But right now, Netflix is the only game in town if you want to watch Bradley Cooper as Leonard Bernstein himself. So we will be reviewing that on Friday. In the meantime, for more in-depth reviews, you can watch Not Your Status Quo. You can watch all sorts of stuff about hidden gem shows and movies with Attack on Show. And you can catch all our stuff if you're interested in what we've done in the past on Twitch, X, Twitter, Facebook,
All the things.
YouTube, just go look for us out there and you'll find us. So,
You'll find us just searching Fatherly Fandom. We're there. So give us a thumbs up with this review as well as all of our other stuff. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out. So we really appreciate that. Can't wait. Talked about Maestro on Friday. I think we're doing it in the morning too. So switching it up Friday morning.
bright and early.
Getting on that. And then we'll have to decide after that what's the next Academy Award winning, hopefully, nominee.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
to come.
Yeah, we will see. We'll let you know as we get a chance to watch all of these great films. So
Right. So, all right, everybody.
halfway
Thanks for
through,
joining.
brother.
Halfway through. Celebrate. All right. We'll see you on later. Let's hit the outro. So thanks for joining me today on Fatherly Fandom, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. From our families to yours, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.